America cuts $3.8 billion a year in a check to Israel while our own roads crumble and vets sleep on the streets. So why? It's not because smart foreign policy is driving those decisions, but because politicians are bought and paid for. This is a fact. The only lobby allowed legally to do it, AIPAC. Tonight, we break down how foreign aid isn't about America first. It's about who's writing checks to Washington. Nick Fuentes on the Jess Purley podcast about 2 years ago talks all about this. Nobody wants you to see it, and you're going to see it right now.
They actually were terrorists there. A lot of people don't know this. Everybody says Muslims are the terrorists, but it was really the Jews that kind of invented that in the Middle East against the British, against the Americans, against the Muslims. They did bus bombings. They bombed civilian infrastructure, military infrastructure.
Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already.
The Jews did. Okay.
The Zionist settlers.
Why is the narrative that, because if I remember correctly at the time, the narrative was that Palestine was doing it. Is that untrue?
Well, they do it now.
Oh, okay.
But it's about the power dynamic. Because 100 years ago, the Muslim government was in power, and then it was a British government, and the Jews were in the minority, and they were agitating for their own state. Then they got their state, and they built up a military, and they got all the support from America, and now the Muslim Palestinians are in the minority, and now they use these guerrilla militant terror.
You know, this is a very interesting and very heated topic for debate, because people say that it's what they believe, that Israel didn't earn the right to the property that they are now obtained, and that they are trying to branch out, as they are not actually supposed to be doing that in general anyways. However, I recommend maybe either let me know in the comments if you want more on that, or go look at that content. There's plenty of that content out there. However, this is where Nick flips the script. And everyone's been told, what he's saying is everyone's been told for decades that Muslims are the ones who invented terrorism, suicide bombings, radical groups, I mean, you name it. But Nick really says that that's not the full picture. He points out that it's actually Israelis in the mid-20th century who pioneered these tactics, like bombing hotels and targeting civilians. I saw this video about how they were the first ones to create a miniature bomb that will go inside of a cell phone that can just trigger whenever they want. And this was back a couple decades ago. So whether you agree with him or not, that raises a brutal question: who defines terrorism, and why do we only attach it to one group? If Israel's founding involved militant groups using these same tactics, then the narrative of Muslims invented terrorism looks more like selective history than reality. So if mainstream media only reminds us of one version of events, then it's most likely not just about who did it, it's who controls the story today and what they want you to know.
It's really just about the power differential. And that's kind of what
But your point of view is that they were there first, Palestine?
Well, here's the thing. I don't really care. I don't have a dog in that fight.
Oh, but your point of view is that we should stay out of it.
My point of view is that there is this, and we have to, if you're a political person, we have to talk about it. Why does conservative media care so much about the Israel-Palestine conflict? It has to do with, well, who's making those editorial decisions in conservative media?
And they're Jewish.
They all have that in common. I mean, like...
Why? Because, okay, maybe they just have closer ties, but I'm thinking from my point of view, I'm Irish. I don't really care what goes on in Ireland. Why do they have or why do you think they have such strong opinions on this?
They're very tribal. And it's no secret that they're a tribal people. You know, their identity has resisted assimilation for thousands of years. Think about it. Jews have never had a country until 60, 70 years ago, but they've maintained their religion, their culture, their ethnic identity, being scattered all over the world, and minorities in every country. Almost every other group assimilates, and they eventually become like the people around them, you know, or they'll intermarry, and they just get diluted to the point that they don't exist. So, and that's not for no reason. They have a very strong Jewish identity, and so what goes on in Israel is of great significance to them, and they have a personal stake in that. So
that's why you feel like conservative media talks about that so much, even though it's not an American issue.
That is
And
why,
that
yeah.
was the issue that you had with the different conservative media places.
Yeah, and that's where that beef came.
And just so you know, the historical identity of this entire situation is that Jewish people were stateless for almost 2,000 years after Rome destroyed Judea, and they scattered across Europe, not only Europe, but the Middle East and beyond. And they kept a strong cultural, religious identity. Unlike most groups that assimilate over time and generations, Jews consciously preserve their nationhood through religion, tradition, and community. And then the stake in Palestine and Israel is when the modern state of Israel was created in 1948. It wasn't just about the land. It was more framed as the first safe, sovereign homeland for Jews. And after centuries of persecution and just, the Holocaust and all kinds of things that gives the territory a near mythic importance. But the flip side is that the land wasn't empty. Palestinians were already there. And the thing is, hundreds of thousands of people were completely displaced. The Nakba of 1948, which is what Palestinians and much of the Arab world see as an illegitimate occupation. Why the lobby exists is because Israel is seen as existential for Jewish identity worldwide. Lobbying groups like AIPAC argue that any threat to Israel is a threat to Jewish survival. All right? Not making light of it, but just telling you the facts. That's why American politicians get so caught up in this U.S. national interest straight directly and at any cost. Even when the policies don't serve the U.S. national interest, they're pressured to protect Israel. And people often say Muslims created modern terrorism, but from the Palestinian perspective, the violence and bombings began as resistance against land seizure and occupation. So they're just defending themselves from their perspective. And Nick flips at that point, saying if you zoom out, Israel's creation itself was the disruption that fueled decades of conflict.
Here I was naively hearing the rhetoric and the branding, which was America first. And I said, yeah, America first. And then I said, well, okay.
And he does get into it here with one of his old bosses, I believe, in the company that he worked for, explaining how he got involved with getting fired and where the start of all of the issues for him really started to begin. And it was him questioning the company he worked for about why America saying America first, but the actions are showing Israel first. So let's get into that.
Okay, America first. Well, I don't see how Israel fits into that. And then they said, whoa, yo, you're asking too many questions. Literally. They were like, you can't ask that anymore. I'm like, well, why not? And specifically because...
Did they say that actually, like word for word?
Literally.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Who said it?
This guy, Elliot Hamilton, who worked for them.
Elliot Hamilton.
And he's Jewish.
I feel like, have I heard that name before? Is he
No,
on Twitter?
No.
No.
Well, yeah, maybe. But he's like a low-level writer.
Okay.
But he literally told me, it's anti-Semitic to ask that. I'm like, what? And the arrangement specifically that I was talking about is foreign aid.
And that anti-Semitic to ask that, it's written in their law against anti-Semitism that if you even question their intent, that is anti-Semitic. So you can see how that can get kind of hairy, right?
Israel's the number one recipient of foreign aid from America.
Really?
Yeah.
How much money do we send over there?
$3.8 billion per year.
We send them $3.8 billion a year. Wow.
And here's the thing. That's a high number. They've been the number one recipient since 1978. You know who the next...
And why are we sending billions when our own bridges are falling apart? China's out here building highways in Africa while we just cut checks to Israel. This makes zero sense.
Highest recipient is Egypt. Egypt is the second highest recipient because we basically bought them out. Egypt was going to war against Israel for decades until we started paying them basically to not do that.
Really?
Yeah.
And would the conservatives say that's not true?
What would
they say?
Their rebuttal would be that, well, we give them so much aid because they're our closest ally and they do so much for us. But the fact of the matter is that there exists an extremely influential lobby in America that lobbies American politicians to support that foreign aid. It doesn't have anything to do. In other words, we don't give Israel that money like because it makes sense for us, or Egypt for that matter. We give them that money because politicians are paid and influenced by a foreign interest lobby to pass those policies.
But could you explain
See,
that?
and that's the thing is I'm not saying we should cut all foreign aid. That's obviously unrealistic, and honestly, it's dumb for foreign policy. So I am on board with some foreign aid. It can be strategic, and look at China. They're not just writing blank checks. They're building highways, ports, mines, power plants all over Africa. And it's because Africa is sitting on rare earth minerals that power phones, computers, EVs. China spends now, locks in resources later, and then calls return on investment when the time comes. So compare that to us cutting $3.8 billion to Israel every single year with no ports, no infrastructure, no rare earth contracts, just loyalty, and of course, access to Palantir and whatever other intel opportunities that arise.
I'm sorry.
Sure, yeah. So in other words, like if I'm an American saying where should we send our money, I would probably send it to, I don't know, like the poorest countries in the world. Like that would be a place to start. Where is it? Like sub-Saharan Africa.
Do you think we should send any money overseas?
I think it's part of me says no, like we should rebuild our own country first. Another part of me says that's part of foreign policy. Like there is a benefit sometimes for giving foreign aid, because look at what China's doing. China is spending a lot of money in Africa to build up these countries so they can.
To be honest, when it comes to foreign aid, as an American, and I'm asking myself, where should our money go? My first instinct is home. It's not anywhere else. Now, I understand foreign aid can be deployed at the same time as here in the U.S. However, I feel like foreign aid and that money should really just be prioritized to us first, get ourselves situated, and then if we are ready to help other people across the world after our country is tits perfect, then we can go give extra aid. Bridges, schools, water systems, veterinarians, doctors, additional help in medical field that people are short-staffed. The basics. Flint still doesn't have clean water, and we're wiring billions to Tel Aviv. That's insane. Now, if we're going to send money overseas, it should be strategic and not sentimental or politically motivated. You want to play empire, fine, but go where the ROI is, or return on investment, like building ports in Africa or connecting with, more of the Panama Canal and making sure that's locked in, because China's been trying to do that, and making sure that everything in the territory around it is completely bought out and paid for by the US. So we are dominating, They're eating our lunch. China is eating our lunch because they treat foreign aid like a business. We treat foreign aid like loyalty checks. The one thing that aid should never be is what it is right now, and it's a payoff to keep a lobby happy. And that's not foreign policy.
They can harness the raw materials in Africa because they have all the rare earth minerals that we now need for like phones and computers and things. So China's spending it very wisely, and they're building up infrastructure. They're building ports, highways, bridges.
Where are they doing that in Africa?
Well, they're doing it in like the Congo.
Oh, okay.
The Congo is a very resource-rich country. They're doing it in West Africa.
But the idea is that there's something in it for them, and you feel like in Egypt and in
Israel,
sorry. In Egypt. So you feel like in Egypt and Israel, there's nothing in it for us.
No, there isn't.
And so you're not necessarily against sending foreign aid. You're just against sending foreign aid for interests that aren't ours. And these interests seem to be for the Jews. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. It's, in other words, it's if you're an American and you're going to lay out, should we send money? Where should we send it? How much? If you were doing that with our interest in mind, you wouldn't send it to Israel and Egypt first.
Right.
The reason it's sent there is because there are very influential groups that lean on politicians, and the politicians make the decisions about where to send the money. Because there's like a group, here's a good example. There's a group called AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, and their job is to lobby for foreign aid and for things like that. Every president speaks at their conference. The congressional leadership of both parties speaks there. 2/3 of the congressmen speak there, and that would be like if there was a group lobbying for China that said like we support the People's Republic of China, we want America to do everything for China, and like imagine if all the politicians spoke there, you'd be like, oh, like the government's owned by China.
Oh, and so you think that the government's owned by Israel and Egypt?
Yeah, not necessarily Egypt, but yeah, Israel.
How would that even work? Just because they like, are the politicians getting money from them, or is it just because they're connected with Jewish people? Like I'm thinking logically, because if someone random's running for office and they're not Jewish, how are they owned by a country overseas?
It's about the money.
So they're just getting paid.
They're getting paid, and here's the thing: if they don't go along with it, there's all kinds of consequences. Like often what will happen is if somebody goes against the interest, the easiest way to get them out of office is to pour a ton of money into a primary challenger. So if I'm like a Republican and I say, you know what, like no more foreign aid, the Republican Party and like these influential Zionist groups will fund a Republican to challenge me in the next election for the Republican nomination. And often, that person will win because money in local races and like, or not local races, but, in congressional races, it goes a long way.
See, a lot of people don't get how AIPAC works. And like he said, it stands for American Israel Public Affairs Committee. It's not some backroom conspiracy. It's a straight up legal lobby and probably the most powerful foreign lobby in America. Every president speaks, like he said, at their conference. 2/3 of the Congress shows up. And why? Because they control the campaign money and they mobilize it like a machine. Now, the crazy part is that US law, most foreign governments can't lobby here directly. China can't open ChinaPAC and start cutting checks to politicians. Russia can't. Saudi Arabia can't. If they tried it, it has to go through strict registration as a foreign agent under FARA, okay? And it's tightly watched. But Israel's lobby is different. AIPAC is technically an American organization made up of US citizens who support Israel. So that loophole lets them operate openly, funneling massive amounts of money into campaigns, shaping policy, and making sure aid to Israel never gets cut. It's the only foreign cause with the level of protected, organized lobbying powered in DC. So when people say, why do we send billions every year to Israel, it's not because Congress just loves handing out money. It's because if a politician steps out of line, AIPAC will fund their challenger and drown them in campaign money until they are gone. That's not paranoia. That's literally how the system is set up. If you think that AIPAC and these foreign lobbies convincing our politicians with money, strangleholding them with funds, with their political party tied directly to AIPAC, how do you feel about that? Leave a comment in the box down below. Hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. And catch me on the next one. It's your boy Danks. I'm out.
Yeah.